Okay, it's already 6:02, so I think we're good to go. So hello everybody and welcome to the first event of Digital Wellbeing. My name is Sofia Leinonen and I'm the chair of Helsinki Think Company Association. And I'm going to host this event with our community manager, Chris, who will moderate the event. And today we're going to learn and discuss about different aspects of coping in the digital environment. And we have three specialists within the field presenting their perspective and answering your questions about coping with the fatigue caused by all these Zoom webinars. And I know this is a Zoom webinar as well, but I promise it's going to be worth your while. And you can ask speakers questions during the presentations and in the panel discussion via Q&A box found in the bottom right corner of the screen. And Chris will tell you more about our speakers and speeches in a bit. But first, I'm going to tell you a bit about our Helsinki Think Company and what do we actually do here. So, as some of you might already know, Helsinki Think Company is the entrepreneurship society of the University of Helsinki. And our goal is to take academics to action with entrepreneurial programs and events targeted at students from all fields and graduates, researchers, freelancers, startups, and you name it, the list is endless. The thing the community has in common is the shared goal to create impact into society by combating big real world problems. And Helsinki Think Company was founded in 2013, and since then we have expanded to all of our university campuses in Center, Meilahti, Kumpula, and Viikki. And we offer free co-working spaces and hosting services for individuals and teams to work on their ideas. And for now, unfortunately, we're closed until the 9th of May at least, but follow us on social media to be the first to know when we are opening our facilities again. And since we're all have been transferred online, our programs and events have followed, and this spring we're organizing food-themed idea accelerator called Ruokis and healthy workshops, which contain all the things you need to consider when setting up a company. But last but not least, the event is enabled by our board of the association, my colleagues who make sure that Think Company community is doing well and corresponds to current trends, and that all of our students are brought on board. But now let's welcome my colleague Christopher, who will actually lead us to the topic of the day, which is digital well-being. Welcome, Chris.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Petrie. I'm the community manager for the board. And yeah, I just want to first just take you through what it is, the concept of digital well-being and how we're thinking of it. And then second, to introduce you to the speakers. And at the end, we'll have kind of a panel discussion where you have the opportunity to ask questions and that kind of thing. So perhaps save up your questions and feel free to write them in the chat. But I'll just give you a brief, just kind of synopsis of the concept of digital wellbeing. So we all know that the digital world is rapidly growing and is part of our daily lives today. and everyone is spending more and more time with digital devices. Despite many issues highlighted in our popular media, the impact of digital innovation has seen many positive effects worldwide. So for example, an increased scope in learning and the newest knowledge and connecting with others from all over the world. But due to a lack of separation between our online and offline worlds during COVID-19, it is no surprise that the average time we spend with digital devices increased dramatically since 2020, which is unlikely to change back to pre-pandemic levels, with increased acceptance of remote working, for example, and which also creates the potential unhealthy imbalances with our offline lives. Therefore, it is becoming increasingly necessary to adopt resilient and healthy habits when using digital devices. So the concept of digital wellbeing is an undeveloped concept and is yet to be have a widely accepted definition. However, digital wellbeing is often targeted specifically as being part of the wider umbrella of wellbeing rather than something separate. So prominent writers on wellbeing mostly agree that it's a holistic view of living life that includes being physically and emotionally healthy, for example, aspects of social, mental, emotional, self-confidence, motivation, enjoyment, and more. And you can see some of those aspects on the slide here. So with this in mind, digital wellbeing could adapt this definition to specifically target the healthy use of digital devices. So in summary, we could think of digital wellbeing as building on this wider concept of wellbeing with the ability to live holistically healthy lives, considering all activities that involve the use of digital technologies. So for example, the healthy use of social media, dealing with cyberbullying and other abusive behavior, promoting positive use, positive online communities, and online addictive behaviors, and of course, much more. So secondly, I have the privilege of introducing three wonderful speakers today. And I'll just briefly introduce them before they get going. So Pekka Freese, so just excuse my pronunciation of the names here, is a psychologist, work-life skills coach and speaker, as well as a top-notch barista, so I hear. So his job is to help experts with their emotional skills, build knowledge, work skills, and interaction skills. Freese will speak about self-management in a digital environment. And secondly, we have Rasmus Manneström as a postdoctoral researcher at the Faculty of Educational Sciences. His main research focuses currently on the longitudinal interrelationships between personal, social, and social identity issues, well-being, gender, and socio-economic status in adolescence and young adulthood. Rasmus has also studied political values, ideology, and engagement among young adults. Furthermore, he has a keen interest in qualitative research on identity issues, questions ranging from nationalism and xenophobia to career choice discourses and representations of femininity and masculinity on social media. And lastly, we have Erika Maksniemi, so sorry for my pronunciation there, is a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Educational Sciences, University of Helsinki. Her educational background is in educational psychology, and she is a class teacher as well as a subject matter teacher in health education. Her PhD research focuses on adolescence and well-being in the digital age. She is especially interested in different socio-digital practices, sleep behavior, and academic well-being of adolescents, and how these are intertwined in the daily lives as well as in the longer period. She is using multi-dimensional data sets that combine longitudinal self-report questionnaire data as well as psychologically measured daily activity data. Her talk will focus on individual differences and how digital media does not affect individuals the same way. And so with that, I'll welcome Pekka Freese to the stage, and yeah, thank you for joining us.
All right. Just a sec, let me stand up to a bit more space to speak. So, hi everyone, my name is Pekka, and I'm a psychologist. I train all kinds of people who work with people, mostly. I train supervisors, customer service people, doctors, nurses, teachers about psychological work-life skills. And the topic that we'll be touching today is something that's very close to me, the self-management or self-leadership. During your studies, during working, during this digital time where we are a lot at home by ourselves, and that is very close to me because I've been for the past 1 year, this whole Corona time, I've been working as a solo entrepreneur. So I started my own business fresh out of university last February, and then the Corona hit instantly. So this is something I've been doing myself all the time. And I want to share some of my practices and some of my perspective from psychology. So the challenges I want to touch on are regarding motivation. So people, I'm hearing from my friends and from the studies at Helsinki University, and what information Sofia gave me for this talk, that motivation is something that is challenging, and of course it is. Like, we are so much at home, we're not seeing many people, we don't have those social interactions, we are not changing places, and we have to muster that motivation from ourselves. And I'll give you some perspectives for that. Second thing is that when that motivation is lacking a little bit and we don't have that routine from outside, getting started with things can be very difficult. And through that also this like sense of control, that you are doing the right things, that you are learning the right things, can slip from your hands more easily. And lastly, I want to touch on a bit like on how might you create a bit more social distance studying, distance working life. And I just want to like use a very old way of presenting. I didn't want to make any PowerPoint slides, so I just write one word here. Volition is the perspective I want to bring to you today. What volition is it is the 2.0 of motivation in motivational psychology. So if you think of motivation, it's something, it's like a burst of energy going towards something, but it disappears very quickly. So motivation is kind of like throwing a small rock down a big hill, and the small rock might go down for some time, but then it stops when there is a bigger rock or a bit of a flat ground. But what volition is, that it's like a big rock that you slowly and with effort you get it rolling, and when you get it rolling, it rolls all the way down the hill. So volition is really mustering your will, mustering your willpower and your plans and your self-confidence in order to achieve what you want to achieve. Volition builds from three things I will be touching on. So firstly, it builds on motivation. Now this doesn't, okay, there we go. So motivation is the first part. Second part is confidence. And the third part that I think is very important and really builds the basis for volition and for this rock to roll down the hill, even though your motivation can flutter and your confidence keeps getting lost, especially when you're not getting so much feedback and not getting those social contacts where we are right now. So what we need is a plan, and this is not like maybe my best drawing, but let's go. So the plan really builds the basics, and I will be touching most on the plan because that's what has helped me the most, and that's what is usually not talked about so much. So volition needs effort upfront, effort from you to create volition. It doesn't come from somewhere. During this time when we are a lot at home and days look alike, it's easy to get lost in that and just be frustrated and lose hope and just hope that things would get different from outside, but they don't. Like maybe they will at some point, but that's at least not the decision that I would want to make. I give you the good news that you can influence your situation and you can influence your digital well-being a lot by taking the time to discuss with yourself about your motivations. Have a talk. Ask yourself, like, why am I interested in these studies at all? Why am I interested in this course? Why am I interested to do this exam? What hinders my motivation? What might I get from this? And what I really started to understand in like the last year of university is that I don't need to learn everything, and I can really pick the stuff that is motivating for me. So maybe you can just let go of some stuff and put your focus on what actually matters for you. Secondly, you should like take also some time up front to discuss with yourself your confidence in doing. And that confidence builds from your previous experience. It builds from having that like control that comes from having a good plan. So let's go a bit to the plan, and I want to use an example from my own life where I managed to really well design my autonomous work on my master's thesis 2 years ago. And my really like my motivation and my goal for the thesis was that I do it the quickest possible way. I'm not interested in research. I am interested in practical stuff. That's why I'm a trainer. I wanted to go to the working life. So that was my goal. I made it very clear to my supervisor. Then I was like feeling that this project is very big. And what I did is that I just took it apart into pieces. I was like, okay, well, I've done literature reviews before. I've done statistical analysis before. I have done some discussions on research before. Okay, those are like stuff that I know. As a whole, they felt really big, but when I put them down into pieces, I felt more confident. So those became my my 3 goals for the 3 months that I planned to do my thesis in. And Let's see if I succeeded in that. I'll tell you in a bit. But the plan was really the most important part. Firstly, I want to give you 3 tips from my experience. Firstly, I made it very clear for myself when I will be working and when I will not be working on my thesis and in general in my studies. I decided that I work from 9 to 1, so 4 hours every Monday to Thursday. And what that really made was that when I was working, I really wanted to work because I only had so little time. And then when I was not working, I was like, okay, I can do whatever I want. And also because this kind of stuff can be anxiety provoking and stressful, doing difficult big projects, especially when you're alone, constrained in your home environment. It's very important to make clear boundaries between your studying time, your working time, and your free time. And I'm still carrying that on. Now I'm working from 9:15 to 3:30 or 4 from Monday to Thursday. And that really helps me to start, that helps me to get on with difficult stuff. Second thing is that I started to plan my weeks every Sunday evening or Monday morning. So I planned 2 things. Firstly, I planned the most important work that I should do during that week. So what are my goals? What are the things that I'm working on? And secondly, I planned fun stuff. I contacted friends who I want to spend time with. I planned something new. I planned that, okay, maybe this week I will do more yoga on my breaks or something. And I would really recommend you, especially now that we're a lot at home and days look alike, to take time to plan something new for every week. Plan something that you have not been doing, but you enjoy, because it doesn't happen spontaneously. It's easy to get to those routines and do the same things every evening, every weekend. So plan something crazy. And that might take some digging up because you have not been doing those things. So they're not in your fast memory. Okay, and the third thing I want to give you is that take clever breaks. What the research shows about clever breaks, psychologically wise breaks, is that they give your mind a break from thinking, break from making decisions, a break from associating stuff. So good breaks are one of 3 kinds. They are either fun, they are physical, or they are restful. So fun break could be dancing or juggling or whatever you like to do, play with your dog. A physical break can be taking a quick run or walk or doing some yoga. And a restful break can be just taking a nap, which is an amazing thing that we can do now that we are working at home. And don't go on social media, don't go reading news, don't go browsing online during your breaks. That just gives your mind more and more stuff to work on, and your mind gets cluttered. I know it's very tempting, and I still sometimes do it myself, because it is a good way. It's such a tempting way to alleviate this stress, tiredness, and anxiety that comes from working sometimes and quite often, because it gives really instant gratification, right? So please be considerate about that, and make those breaks really clear for yourself. How I do it is that I have a timer. I take 32 minutes for working and 6 minutes for a break. Sometimes I did 16 minutes working and 2-minute break. It might be up to 50 minutes, but most of the time you shouldn't work more than 50 minutes in one slot, because then your mind really starts to get too tired. And what these clever breaks do, which are fun, restful, or physical, is that they also give your mind and brain the possibility to consolidate what you learned, to make those associations and really learn well on that one time that you did. So what I like you to take from this is volition. Look it up, read about it, start planning, start creating clear plans, and take time for planning. You really need to take time for that. It requires effort. It needs at least 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours every month or so, and then a smaller amount every week to discuss with yourself, because otherwise things will be the same all the time if you don't put that effort and that thought into it. I know that I took a bit more time. I hope that will not be a problem for us. Thanks for your attention. I can touch on some of the ideas for the increasing your social interaction in the panel discussion, but I want to stop here so that we can go forward. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pekka, and some wonderful practical tips in there. So just a note for all the attendees, you can submit your questions in the question box or the chat box below, and we'll address them perhaps in the panel discussion. But next, I'd like to invite Erika to the stage to present what she has to say. So Erika, the stage is yours.
Good. You're seeing my screen, right? Good. Sorry to have a PowerPoint, but I really also like that Pekka didn't have it. But actually, I'm currently on my maternal leave. I have a almost 5 months old baby, so without this PowerPoint slide, my talk will be something not organized at all. Great. Like that. Good. So I was asked to talk about digital media and the effects it has on our psychological well-being, which I have been studying at the University of Helsinki. And my main point comes here in the first slide. And the research has shown that on young people and teenagers especially, on average, digital media has very little or even no effect on our psychological well-being. And this is often something that people don't, I don't even believe, but we think that it's opposite. We think that digital media has a big role on our psychological well-being. But what is important to remember is that we are all different. So for most people, the research has shown that there is no special effects on our psychological well-being, and actually maybe the effects are even positive for most of people. Because if you think about it, why would we be using digital media that much if it would only cause us harm or stress or negative things? But then for a small group of people, often those who have some kind of challenges kind of outside the digital environments, those people are often most at risk for online problems as well. For example, the research shown between social media use and depressive symptoms nowadays has shown that actually it's not, social media is not causing depressive symptoms, but it's more likely vice versa. But there is this common narrative that I would like to us all forget, is that digital media has some kind of big effect on us, and often we think that it's a negative one. And especially when we talk about young people, you can see these headlines that digital media has destroyed the new generations, and teenagers are only online and chatting and social media use. They're using social media and so on. But what the scientific evidence says is that there's actually very small association or no association at all. But even though this has been studied even almost 20 years now, we still lack of good quality longitudinal studies. And the reason why we are lacking high quality evidence is that digital media use is kind of all the time moving and changing, and it changed us and we are changing it. So it's really hard to make any studies on it because it's so complex. And so on average, we could say that there's no effects, but what's important to remember is that the effects are not the same for everyone, because we are kind of different kind of flowers, each of us, and we use digital media in many, many different ways. Even though two different persons are reporting that they use Instagram, for example, for chatting, for scrolling the feeds, or searching information, or following interesting people, still the content is different for different people. The time they spend online might be same, and kind of the way they use it is the same, but how it affects us, that's an individual effect. And also for the same person, in different situations, the effects might be different, because all our pre-existing kind of situations and our experiences and the developmental stage, I mean our age, for example, really plays a role here. Here's one quite complex theory, but here you can see that the question how digital media is affecting our psychological well-being is not that simple, because it's really complex and many different kind of stages and pre-existing challenges and social dimensions are affecting our media use. It's affecting the media effects, and kind of there's these predictors and moderators and mediators. So that's all. It's a complex situation. But if you think about your own digital media use, and if you're worried about if it has a negative impact on you or not, I would suggest that please forget the term screen time. Nowadays, it's not that relevant. It's not relevant that we kind of measure screen time at all. And actually, there's some interesting studies nowadays that say that those people who are worrying about the screen time or thinking that they are having problems or problems to manage the time they spend online, those people often it has an impact on their psychological well-being, because yeah, you think that it's a bad thing and it becomes a bad thing. But when we check, for example, the log times or the objective measures of screen time, those are not associated on our psychological well-being. So that's a quite interesting finding. And if you think about your digital practices, they are under the same term screen time, but we can kind of separate those things into physiologically, cognitively, or emotionally arousing practices. it is something to think about if your digital media use is affecting, for example, your posture. Now we are working on computers all the time at home, and it's we're not moving that much, so it's a maybe a problem. Cognitively, like Pekka said, that scrolling your social media is kind of giving you this stimulus on your brain that we probably not always all the time need, and brain researchers are actually kind of suggesting that sometimes we need offline time to let our brain to relax. And also this emotional state, or the emotional effects are interesting, because if you can detect those practices you have online that make you feel bad or make you some kind of more stressful or in a negative way, those things you should maybe cut down more. For example, I have stopped using Twitter because I found that I don't get any positive vibes from Twitter discussions, because I think it was a lot of negative things there. So the time spent is secondary, but and it's important to understand that, like, we know that online and offline, you can't separate those. But if there's some kind of displacement from the digital time to some other activities, for example, if you're only online and you're not eating, you're not sleeping, or you're not exercising, then maybe it's a problem. But instead of screen time and worrying about that, maybe you could focus on functions and motivations, which is more relevant. So ask yourself why I'm doing this thing online. For example, why am I using Instagram? I'm using it because all my friends are using it, and I like to see what they are up to from their stories. And sometimes there are some interesting tips I can get from there. How I'm using it. For example, this Twitter, how am I using it? I want to use my digital media time in a positive way, or I want to use it, I need to use it for work or studying, but I don't want to use it for negative things. And then when, this I like, because if you're only using digital media during the night, maybe that's a problem and you should reconsider. So there's this thing about balance in everything we do in life. If you're running too much, you get sore ankles. If you're eating too much, you are overweight. You know, there's a balance in life. Don't overdo things, and that's something I think it's important when we think about using digital media as well. So it's a kind of this U-shaped curve that actually we need some screen time and we need some time online, because I don't think it's possible nowadays to cut down everything. So too little might cause that you're out of the social groups, you don't get the latest news, your work is impossible to do, you can't study. So too little is causing, is decreasing your well-being. But also too much can decrease your well-being, because then it might displace time from, for example, sleeping. And here it's important to remember that even though this is kind of U-shaped curve, the mechanisms why screen time is affecting our psychological well-being, those are different. Too much, we can think that there's some kind of displacement, and too little is, for example, cutting down the social groups from our lives. So on the top of the U-shaped curve, there's this kind of sweet spot. And for teenagers and young people, the big studies have shown that it's actually 5 to 7 hours. After 5 to 7 hours digital time on top of study and work, your well-being starts to decrease. But there's a individual sweet spot for everyone. So again, how and why, where and when is important what we do. Yeah, I was talking about the displacement already. Sleep researchers love this sentence: close all digital devices 1 hour before bedtime. Even though I'm studying these things and sleeping behavior, I don't believe in this. I can admit that I'm using my phone 1 hour before I go to bed. But I think it's really important to think why and how. What I'm doing before I go to bed is I'm doing these puzzles on my phone. It's 140 pieces of puzzle, small puzzle. It takes me like 20 minutes to do it. I'm using this blue light filter on my phone during the evening so that it doesn't get me awake more. And for me to do the puzzle almost every evening is kind of this transition from the day to night. And for me, it works. For someone, you're reading or listening to ebook, that's a digital time using digital devices. I don't see that's a harmful thing. Or if you're checking your social media, like many, I think almost all using Instagram are doing it before they go to bed. If that makes you relaxed, that's okay. But then again, how we're using it. I'm using the blue light filter. It works for me. You need to find your own ways. Okay. Before I end, here are the last conclusions from my speech. So don't worry about the overall screen time. Focus on motivations and usage, the functions for usage. Try to kind of reflect how, why, and when I'm doing it, and who am I, and how it works for me. Because we all have this individual sweet spot, and yes, digital media has displaced time from some activities on our lives, but you know, societies and life goes on and evolves, so maybe it's not a displacement anymore if there's some kind of balance with all these dimensions of our daily life. And then we all have some kind of pre-existing challenges that are not related, that doesn't come from offline practices, but because we can't separate online and offline anymore that easily. So if you have some kind of offline challenges, those often, you know, exist online as well. So be aware of these. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erika. That was a wonderful talk, and I really liked the way that you were debunking some of the urban myths about digital devices and digital well-being. And I recognize some of the readings by Andrew Shapolsky there in some of your slides. Lastly, just want to invite Rasmus up onto the stage, and yeah, looking forward to what he has to say before we have our panel discussion. So over to you, Rasmus, the stage is yours.
Hi, thanks, Chris. So I'm Rasmus Manneström. I'm the postdoctoral researcher in identity issues and to some extent digital issues also. Maybe I'm taking a maybe a bit different take on the digital well-being question. Maybe I bring back some of the urban myths to the discussion, but no. First of all, I also have some slides. Unfortunately, I will share them. I believe you should see Do you see the whole screen now? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I named my presentation to be or not to be, and you will find out why. In contrast to Pekka's very individual or psychological focused presentation and Erika's on the research, more on the psychological research perspective, I will give a much more socio-structural perspective on the question of digital media and well-being, because I partly believe that at least increasing understanding of the larger picture will help us maybe in these questions. First of all, I would talk about the problem, then the cause, and then I'll give you the antidote. So the problem is basically what Erika was already outlining. I mean, there's been so much discussion about whether digital media, social media causes well-being or causes, for instance, depression, anxiety, and so on, or not, and what's the direction between these factors, and the problem is exactly that this is a false dichotomy. The early research that looked at very broad variables such as just social media use or time spent on internet were very simple and in that way very misleading. Maybe in this perspective, I would to some degree, I would disagree to some extent with Erika here, because I think that's at least some new research that tries to take a very more specific perspective on the situation the individual is in. That how, for instance, previous psychological well-being and so on, how that affects their well-being after using, for instance, social media. And what this new research kind of shows is at the same time exactly what Erika was saying, that it depends on the individual. It depends on what your background is and what you use it for and so on. So we have increasing evidence that it's the kind of it's I would say not only the type of social media use, but also how you use it, and furthermore, like the purpose, why you are using it. And this is much what Erika was just saying. What I would like to present, though, is kind of the larger background why I believe that so many still have problems with digital devices and social media use. And I want to underscore that digital media does not, or digital media use, social media use does not automatically per se lead to poorer well-being, but it's more the use and how. And I will now go to the causes. I'm not sure. Do you see this all 3 points already, or one at a time? Okay. Well, whatever.
The presentation mode is not on, I think.
Oh.
If you push it again, now it's on.
Okay, now it's on. Yeah. Yes. So the cause. I will start from social comparison, since I'm a social psychologist. Humans have an innate mechanism that we compare ourselves to others, and that's the only way we build ourselves. That's how we develop our mind. I also believe this is not really something new for the listeners. This is something that's been brought up several times related to digital media use. The thing with social comparison is that our self-esteem is sort of built into it. It's dependent on it. And why the digital media affects this in a strong way is because what has happened to our kind of environment in the last just, well, not decades, but if we look even further back. Some sociologists talk about a move from so-called role societies to identity societies. And with this, it's meant that in the past, in so-called traditional or pre-modern societies, people had very fixed identities. We were brought up in a certain societal status and societal position, and we received the kind of recognition that was included in that societal position. Now, during the last 100, 200 years, due to the industrialization, urbanization, all the individual rights we've gained through different liberal social revolutions and so on, we've gained the position of the free individual and the value, the ideal of the individual, the free individual, realizing, expressing our own needs and desires and so on. What this has done is that we're not anymore tied, we're no longer tied to kinship, family, church, state, religion, and so on. And the result of this is that on the one hand, that we don't have the structures and the meaning that was given to us before. And at the same time, we're forced to compete against other people, our fellow people. And so what this does to kind of our social network of comparison is that it expands tremendously. And what the digital world has then brought into this is just an even more kind of hyper abundance. It's kind of exploded our environment that we compare ourselves, that we mirror ourselves in, and all the people, the choices, the opportunities that we compare ourselves with and build our own self and identity. And this has then been linked to for instance, cognitive overload, because we're bombarded all the time by a lot of impulses from our environment. Another concept that's been commonly used is the one of impression management. But this is nothing new, nothing inherent to the digital environment. I mean, all the theories about impression management, trying to impress others with some clothes, acting, speaking a certain way, were introduced long before any digital platforms existed. But the point with the digital environment is just that it has sort of hyper expanded this environment that we compare ourselves to. Yes. I would argue that the problem is not that much, or how would I put it? Like the root problem of why many feel, for instance, addicted, or we talk about addiction to social networking sites, Instagram and so on, is because this much more profound lack of meaning, lack of identity that is so widespread today, because we lack the structures and the kind of life paths that previously, you could say, guided our lives. And so the digital environment is used as by many then as a tool to kind of search for the meaning and compare ourselves to others and trying to build ourselves, construct our identities. The problem I maybe see with this is that it's the way it's used is often in a very shallow and fleeting way, and it doesn't provide people with the substance that they perhaps would need. And so my sort of, could I call them, cautious antidotes to psychological problems related to, well, maybe increase our coping methods or something, what I could call it, with the whole digital environment. First of all, I'm kind of an optimist. I mean, increasing awareness, we always talk about that increasing awareness helps people. On the other hand, it doesn't, I know it doesn't always help. Telling people about you know, using less sugar or something doesn't help that many people. Some it does, but it doesn't everyone. But still, my point here with increasing awareness is, first of all, to get some kind of grip of this larger picture of why we have difficulties with the digital environment, and it's exactly because we lack this kind of inner meaning and identity, and we're easily drawn to the platforms, digital platforms, because they kind of provide us with this instant satisfaction. And the one, maybe the core point here to understand is that kind of coping method would be to understand that the internet is more of a spectacle. Maybe this is a bit polemically put, but it's a spectacle. And by perceiving it as a spectacle, you can distance yourself from it. At least when I'm now talking about social networking sites and Instagram and so on, is that it's a machine for impression management. And what we need are kind of thicker lenses, and what we sometimes also call media literacy. We need thicker lenses or maybe thicker lenses is not even the right word. Maybe we need somehow sharper lenses, maybe, because we need kind of background information. We need something to compare to kind of be able to understand what we see and distance ourselves from it. That it's a world not that realistic, and it doesn't help us in that way as we believe. And that's why maybe this kind of core advice or coping method, which is definitely not a quick fix. It's a much more long-term perspective. And this I say this very much as an identity researcher, is that read fiction, read literature, because I mean, there's much need of more research, but there's some evidence already how, for instance, reading fiction develops your theory of mind, your empathy, and so on. And there's also, when we're talking about the digital environment and well-being, usually we don't talk about the associations between digital environment or digital media use and, for example, cognitive skills. And when we look at these studies, for instance, on reading fiction and similar tests, and on digital media use, we see that there are several advantages of reading fiction and what that it does to our cognitive skills. And the last thing would be that well, I can only say that fiction provides us with narratives. It provides us with experiences, choices other people have made before us, or in other situations, in similar situations we've been to. And these are much more, I would say, firm or better building blocks or elements for our identities, for us to sort of build meaning in our lives. And this meaning is not found in the same way in social networking sites or Instagram, though we believe that. And well, this is probably up to dispute and in need of much research, but this was my take on this time. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rasmus. I really liked that you're bringing in some historical perspective there before digital devices and thinking about the role of the ego in our modern times with a more individualistic way of thinking about things, and so many good ideas around mindset and that kind of thing. I'd really like to bring the other speakers to the stage for a panel discussion now, and give some hopefully provocative questions, and maybe there's some questions from the audience at some point that I'll be able to ask. But first, I just want to ask perhaps a provocative question that we, I think Erika and Rasmus have kind of touched on, but maybe it will spur some good debate. If we're just playing devil's advocate, to what extent are we perhaps blaming a symptom rather than a cause? So how is technology in general becoming an easy scapegoat for problems we might be ignoring? So one, like if we put that on a scale, so 1, not at all, it's absolutely a problem, to 10 being the most extreme. Yeah, so what are each of your thoughts before we go into the attendees discussion? Perhaps Pekka, would you like to answer first?
Let me just clarify. So 0 is that social media is not at all the problem. 10 is that it's, no, yeah. Could you repeat? Thanks.
So one is it's not a scapegoat at all. It's not like the cause. 10 is it absolutely is the cause of these psychological problems. So to what extent is it causal?
I would say 4.
And Rasmus and Erika?
Should I go? Okay. Well, Erika, you can say first.
I don't know. I need to think. Really interesting question. And again, putting it on a scale 1 to 10 is putting this really complex issue in a black and white format. But if social media is not at all the problem, or 10, it's the cause. Well, based on the presentation Rasmus gave, it's actually not the social media platforms that is the problem, but it's more likely the way our society and the atmosphere is at the moment. But it has built like it is nowadays because we have this kind of digital solutions. So I would say a number, I say 5. Boring.
I would also say, no, maybe 3 or 4. It's very much a scapegoat. Because, I mean, it's easy to blame. There's no single person behind it. So it's very it's simple to blame. But having said that, I mean, at least I try to kind of argue that still, I mean, it aggravates some people's problems, and depending on in kind of what life situation they are, and so it's part of the problem, but it's very much more a scapegoat, I would say, in my opinion. Yeah.
Because there's no social media behind without people, you know? So it's really hard to blame social media platforms because those are made by people. So,
but I like to use the kind of the analogy of sugar, because I mean it's one of those today, especially when we talk about is like sugar bad or not. I mean it's
the same.
It's who uses it and in what instances, and I mean it's like it's easy to blame sugar for people's poor well-being, for instance.
If I can just take it a step further, if we consider, you know, imagine 5 years into the future, where in particular artificial intelligence is becoming more and more prominent. And the thing is with artificial intelligence is it's all historical data that's kind of making these kind of inferences about what we might like in the future. And that has implicit kind of bias problems. So for example, if you consider Google Translate, for instance, sometimes people have noticed there's kind of gender biases in the way that kind of accentuates those problems. And there's been many other examples like that. So I'm just wondering to what extent, you know, would this kind of perhaps change in the future with these kind of up and coming technologies?
I would like to expand a bit on like the conversation before, from the perspective that social media, like sugar, is like, if there is some challenges, if someone has issues, it's a device or a mechanism that easily gets you stuck into it, and that's the same with gaming and such. And what I am really curious about is that how will artificial reality and virtual reality, added reality, how will those influence us? Because like that might be like even more fully a whole world and a universe where people might get stuck into. And well, I'm using the word stuck because it seems I believe that it might be a bad thing, but on the other hand, it might be a good thing. It might provide for some people a new world where they, like we have seen previously, through internet, through games, that some people really find their path. They find people who are alike. So these more immersive realities, that's something really fascinating. And again, I think we will see positive impacts and we will see challenges, and they are probably the same challenges that the people have anyways. And these devices, these mechanisms will just create very immersive loops to get stuck into, so to say.
I would also say that, well, I completely agree with Pekka, and I would say that it as he said, that we will have the same problems, kind of same problems still, because it doesn't solve like these more profound issues of meaning in life, or like identity issues, how to find continuity in your life and what to do, for instance. in your daily life and your family life and so on. It might offer you certain experiences which might make you happy, for instance, or like it might boost you in some way. It might, like, you go for a virtual reality tour to New Zealand or somewhere. I mean, it gives you a very, or to the moon, I don't know. It might give you a very, very, very nice experience. But as long as you still have your real life here, kind of, and you have to work and so on, the same issues will continue. If we, on the other hand, will have a virtual reality where you can kind of fully immerse yourself, and then kind of leave this reality that we now living. Maybe then you can build your identity fully there, and kind of. But yeah, I don't see that yet in the horizon. So
I find I see mostly only good things and positive things that digital solutions can offer, but also there's this small voice behind my ear saying that it's a bit scary as well, because we are all in a digital bubble. For example, if we think about the social networking sites, even though I think I'm choosing the things I want to see, I'm not 100% doing it, because it's an algorithm and advertising companies and everything that's kind of smoothly setting me into a box, and what's outside the box I don't know. And that's a thing I think we should be aware of even more and more, because yeah, I can easily believe in fake news if I don't know anything outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those answers. I just want to address some of the attendees' questions that are coming up. And for everyone who's listening in, just keep them coming through. I'll try to address them all before we need to end today. But the first one is directed at Rasmus. This person asks, do you think there is a possibility that identity issues, such as the missing sense of belonging, have risen during the coronavirus, now that almost all of the interaction is done online? How to make these online interactions more real so that we're not trying to be somebody else in social media? So.
Well, a good question. I don't have any good answer to that, because I'm eagerly waiting for a lot of research now that's being done. On the one hand, I think that the corona hasn't affected in any way, because the questions, I mean, maybe as I was trying to say that the social media environment doesn't affect. We cannot really build. We don't really build our identities there. It can be a tool and help us, but in that way, now that we're online, a lot of the time online, it doesn't affect our, for instance, well, sense of belonging. You can also talk about sense of belonging. It doesn't help. It doesn't affect it that much. On the other hand, I mean, being alone at home or being much more isolated definitely, I mean, impacts our thinking and our mind and how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive our future. I mean, we start thinking about sort of ourselves and our lives in a completely different manner. So yes, in that way, but I don't have an answer, a certain answer.
It's definitely a tricky, wide-ranging question, that one, but a great one, a provocative one to ask. Move on to the next one. So it says, so is it that digital environment isn't as bad for you as the common belief suggests? And maybe Erika, and I mean, you all had slightly different perspectives. Does Erika, do you want to weigh on that one first?
Well, yeah, the current scientific evidence on young people especially says that it's not that bad for most of the young people. And there's a lot of single studies and nowadays even systematic reviews and meta-analysis done, and they all say the same. On average, using digital media is not that problematic. But for some individuals, it can be very problematic. And then that's but the reason why it's really complex, like we have noticed here today, that there are so many aspects we can think. So the common belief is that we think that digital media is negative, has a negative impact on us, but that's not the case. It doesn't, but it can have a negative impact on a specific person. But if you think about it, if it would be 100% bad, the whole world wouldn't use it. You know, it's insane. So it probably has more, and it has more positive impact on us than negative.
I would again use like the example of reading fiction. If you like, well, no, maybe if we talk about sugar, that sugar is not per se bad. If you, I mean, do a lot of sports and do a lot of other stuff that keeps you going and busy and your mind fresh and so on. I mean, it's not per se bad, and it's the same thing I think with social media, that in a way what Erika was saying, that kind of forget screen time, but then focus on what you do. I mean, whole of the time, you cannot be on social media all the time. If you do a lot of other stuff, and what I would recommend, read a lot of fiction, then I don't see any harm in, because that will bring you other stuff, that will bring you other cognitive skills and physical skills and mental skills, all the other things that you do. And then one thing like social media won't affect you.
It seemed like, yeah, that's something that it seemed you were all in agreement on, was the idea of balance with all things considered. And I really liked some of the kind of the practical kind of intentional tips around planning that Pekka was talking about before on an individual level as well. I'll just go to the next question because there's a few more. It says, as a foreigner who moved to Finland just before the pandemic, social media has been my only real method of connecting with new people and keeping up with friends from home. Is there much research on how social media helps to integrate into new countries? So it help, or should I just cut it off as it feels like living a double life? It's an interesting question there. Pekka, do you want to weigh in on that one?
I feel like I don't have expertise on this. My perspective is that on the other hand, social media can give those opportunities to find interest groups that are close to one's interest easily in a new country. So that's a good thing. It's not like you don't have to search for such a long time and get to know all kinds of people before you find your own people. But I would imagine that nowadays it would be, if at least you're active and you put your effort into it, that it might be easier for one who moves into a new country to just like go online, see, like if I'm interested in gardening, what kind of like gardening groups there is in my area, and getting involved in that. Yeah.
I can also say that I don't remember seeing any research, especially or specifically on like integration issues. But I mean, as we said here, there's a lot of research that's looking on the positive sides of social media, digital devices use, and that's very downplayed. And as I also said, that it can boost, kind of what Pekka was saying, it can boost your social capital. Why not use it? It's a very efficient tool to sort of get sort of integrated, get into a certain new environment, and absolutely use it. But then I would just say that if at some point it starts replacing all your other social contacts, then maybe it becomes a poor tool in that way. But never ditch the social media for that reason. No.
Yeah, just reminded of some news during that when lockdowns were in place, particularly in the UK, that people found some sort of connection through gaming, through online gaming. That's a topic we didn't necessarily dive into, but I remember Erika, you had a few references to Andrew Sapolsky again, who has debunked a lot of the kind of the myths around lots of gaming is really bad for you, and there's kind of some good ideas around there. But lastly, we have we actually have two more questions. So before we need to start wrapping up. So one is how to avoid a comparison, like comparing yourself on social media. It's difficult, even though I know the picture is just given as just a small piece of the truth, even though that it's just like this surface level. Only I assume they're just meaning that they're presenting only what they want to present. Does that question make sense?
Well, I can first say that well, you cannot avoid social comparison. That's the thing. That's the mechanism. Personally, and this is just me personally, I kind of like Erika said about Twitter. I just avoid Instagram and Twitter, and because I feel that they don't bring anything really to my personal life. And so I feel that I avoid those kind of harmful comparisons. But that's my opinion, personal opinion.
I think there's two strategies, like Rasmus and me, we have cut down Twitter and you have cut down Instagram because you notice that this is not a good place for me. Or you can stay there and try to influence it. If you think about like there's the one picture doesn't show the whole truth, but that's actually, if you think about your study groups or groups at work, people always show just one side of them in real life as well. You don't know every sides. We have this kind of working identities or working kind of shields, we keep those quite narrow actually, and we show only small parts of ourselves in real life as well. So for me, that helps. If I see a picture on social media and I start to think that, oh, that's amazing and that's the whole life of that person, and how can she or he be that perfect and everything is on balance, and then I realized that that's impossible. There is no such thing that perfect life or perfect persons. So not in social media, but not in face-to-face as well.
Really interesting answers. Yeah, I guess part of it might be difficult when all of your friends and all the events are kind of communicated through some of these platforms. But yeah, it's one of those complicated questions, I guess, especially for young people. There's a question specifically targeted to Pekka. Is there something professors could adopt in teaching to encourage self-management? How do you see the situation now?
What could professors and teachers generally do? You could give assignments for and base the grades partly on students setting their own goals, for example. So start the course by making an assignment that the students assess their base level, where they are and what they want to learn, what's important to them, what their motivations are, and then make them assess those again. That's like one way you could help it. Yeah, that's something concrete that comes to my mind. And actually, there is another question in the chat. May I answer? We have a couple of minutes. I could just quickly answer that.
We'll need to wrap up in a couple of minutes, but yeah, feel free to address that one.
So there was a question about someone struggling with keeping breaks between studying, and he would like to ask what would a break look like, for example. So how my breaks look like is that sometimes I just sit down and do a body scan, do a meditation. Sometimes I go outside for a small walk. Sometimes I just do some doodling, drawing. Sometimes I go to the toilet or make a cup of tea. Sometimes I do a small exercise. I usually have always this workout, how's it called, my elastic workout thing, or small weights.
Rubber band. It's rubber band.
Rubber band, yeah, that. And do something like that. Sometimes I could take a nap. Sometimes I listen to music. So yeah, it can be many kind of things, and I think it's pretty good to think out some new things you could try out beforehand, because when you are then going to take the break, your capacity to ideate new stuff is very limited. So take time to think about those beforehand.
Excellent, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're just at the end of the session. Well, I just want to thank you so much to the speakers, Erika, Rasmus, and Pekka, for coming. Really, really interesting perspectives, and I think all of you added something really, really unique to the whole topic. That was quite interesting to discuss. I just want to invite Sophia back to the stage to close us off, and yeah, I've very much enjoyed this. Thank you.
So I would like to thank you all for coming in today and giving these inspiring presentations and having this good discussions and good questions as well. And I think we've all learned something about our digital well-being today, and most importantly, how to improve it. And at least for me, it was kind of surprising to find out that the effects of digital media isn't the effects are still more positive than negative. Also, I think it's good to question the challenges we're facing today, since digitalization is only going to increase from now on. But yeah, just as a reminder, the next event is right around the corner on 19th of May. And the next event will reveal what kind of entrepreneurial opportunities there is and startup there are in the field of digital well-being. And yeah, we have innovative companies introducing the digital well-being tools they are offering. So stay tuned and remember to follow us on our social media channels for further info. But for now, be well, everybody, and see you soon, already in next month. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.